Within this video, I'll give a brief demonstration of the Punchout functionality within iPOS using a demo Punchout site. So firstly, I'll just log in as my user and go to create a requisition. And based on my user's permissions as to whether I see a Punchout button displayed. The Punchout button will allow me to punch out to a supplier website. In clicking the Punchout button, I'm displayed with another browser window. This displays all of my available Punchout suppliers as defined within iPOS admin. I also have the ability to select based on catalogue. Catalogue groups like suppliers together. In this case, I've set up a catalogue called stationery that will group my Punchout suppliers that relate to stationery. If I now select the supplier, I will punch out to the supplier website. Now in my case, this is a demo supplier website. The look and feel of all supplier websites will be different, but the concept of adding lines within the supplier website and transferring that information to iPOS is similar. You select your items, add your quantity, you add it to your cart, you go to your shopping cart where you can change the quantities, remove items, etc. In my case, I'll click Return to iPOS. On the supplier website, it'd generally be your checkout button. So in clicking Return to iPOS, I'm presented with a Punchout interim screen. This screen shows the details that have been passed from the supplier website, such as the item code, description, quantity, unit cost, etc. Things such as the delivery address and distribution default based on the user that I'm logged in as and my settings within iPOS admin. Other things such as the purchase account, tax code, these come from default setup within iPOS admin based on your UN SPSC number. You'll notice there that there are some lines that have red dots against them. These red dots indicate there's information missing. This information is required in order to process the iPOS requisition. The top of the screen is where you can define the details to populate the lines below. So as you can see here, the tax code is missing from line number 1. So in order to proceed, we need to rectify that. So I'm just going to change the tax code on line number 1. So I'll deselect all of the fields. As you can see they've been deselected. And I'll just select tax. I'll select my tax code. I'll select line number 1, which I'm wanting to put that tax code onto, and click apply. As you can see, the tax code and the subsequent tax rate has been populated and the red dot no longer exists on that line. Line number 3 is missing the purchase account code, but what I'll demonstrate now is the difference between the apply button and the force line button. The force line will actually override existing values. So where the apply would look and see, oh, there's already something within that field, I don't want to change it, the force line will override existing data. So for this line, I need to populate the purchase account code, but I'm also going to change the tax code. So if I select this line, select purchase account code 36200, and I will change my tax code to be V. If I now click force line, you'll notice the purchase account code has changed. but also the tax code has now changed from H to V. The screen no longer displays any red dots. It means this is ready to process to a requisition. So in clicking submit, I'm not actually submitting the requisition for approval. I'm just submitting the details that have been passed from the supplier website through to iPOS requisition. So clicking submit. My screen looks like a normal requisition that was created within iPOS. But there are some differences. If I click on the clipboard to show the detail of this requisition line, you'll notice that there are some fields there that can't be changed. The supplier, which was sent through from the supplier website, the item code, and the unit cost. These cannot be changed because they've been stipulated by the supplier. You can change other details such as the tax code and the purchase account code. You'll notice there that the approvers are displayed. These follow the normal iPOS business rules and look at the approval matrix as defined within iPOS admin. So this is ready to submit for approval. Line number 1 and 2 are for approver 2 and line number 3 is approver 1. I'll now submit that and quickly approve these lines. The normal emails are sent to the approvers as per a standard iPOS requisition. I'll now log in as our original requisitioner and drill down to the requisition. As you can see, the status of that requisition is approved. My lines only had one level of approval, hence the requisition is now fully approved and ready for purchase order generation. I'll now go to purchase orders. Your purchase orders can be manually generated. Alternatively, they can be generated via a scheduled task within PA Scheduler. So I'm, for the purposes of this demonstration, going to manually generate that order. Click on Generate PO, and the purchase order is sent electronically to the supplier. My purchase order is 1664. Now for the items that I selected, I had that they were automatically goods receipted. If your items require goods receipting, you'll need to go through the normal iPOS functionality of receipting the goods. The invoice will be sent electronically from the supplier to iPOS. The Punchout invoice is imported into the iPOS XML invoice tables, and a search is made to determine if there's a matching iPOS goods receipt. If a receipt is not found, the Punchout invoice will be held within iPOS XML matching, awaiting a scheduled rematch. The rematch process is a scheduled task set up in PA Scheduler. Once a match is found, the invoice will be submitted without requiring any further manual intervention, and the criteria for matching the invoices to orders is defined within iPOS admin, and I'll show you that a little later on. So now we'll just go to see whether our invoice has been sent and processed. So if I look at my purchase order and drill down to my purchase order, you'll notice there that it's, as I mentioned, it was auto receipted, so I've got the receipt number there, but the invoice column shows an N, indicating that it hasn't been invoiced. So from that, I suspect it's sitting within invoice entry XML matching. It may be that there's a discrepancy between the costs between the invoice and the purchase order, or there may be extra lines added. So if I go to invoice entry, I go to XML matching, and I drill down to the batch. As expected, there is a discrepancy. As you can see, I ordered these 3 lines here, but an extra line has come in within the invoice for tax. So I need to correct that in order for the invoice to be processed and subsequently posted to Sun Systems and paid. So within iPOS invoice entry XML matching, to find out what the problem is, I'll click View Errors, and it will tell me the line number and what the problem is. So it's saying there that I haven't got my analysis codes defined on that line. So I'll click Close. I'll drill down to that line. I'll go to my cost allocation tab. I'll enter a purchase account. I'll select my analysis codes and save that line. Now, as this line does not match to a purchase order, I need to force that line. I'll force that. I'll also show that it's an unmatched line, that is, does not match to a purchase order. Click on Unmatched Line. I'll select all the other lines. I will process them, and I will submit this invoice. If I now drill down to my purchase order, you will notice there that the invoice column is now populated. So once the invoice, and if I drill down to that invoice, you'll notice there that the invoice lines number 1 and 2 were automatically approved based on settings. Lines 3 and 4 need to go through the normal iPOS approval process. I will now discuss some of the setup required within iPOS admin. In order to utilize Punchout within iPOS, there's minimal setup required. As you can see there within iPOS admin, there's a Punchout node. For Punchout, you can have budget checking on your non-default items, and at an item level, you can stipulate which items are budget checked as well. I'll show you our Punchout suppliers. Within Punchout suppliers, the bottom of the screen shows you all of your iPOS suppliers that have been set up. You move these from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen to specify which suppliers have been defined as Punchout suppliers. If I drill down to the supplier that we utilised within our demonstration, 81001, you have your technical information regarding your URLs and certificate information, etc. Within that, if you drill down even further, are the entity details. These should only have to be entered once and maintained if any changes are made on the supplier side. We also, remember within our demonstration, When I first clicked the Punchout button, I was displayed with a browser window which showed me all of my available suppliers as defined within there. I also had the ability to select by catalogue, where I grouped suppliers together. In my case, I had one called stationery. So the list here is shorter than the list we had within suppliers, because this only shows us our suppliers that have been defined for Punchout, and you move your suppliers for this catalogue from the bottom window to the top window to be part of this catalogue. A very helpful thing is Punchout defaults. Remember, within our demonstration, I said certain information was returned to the Punchout interim screen based on defaults, and that's defined within here. You can group your items together based on the UNSPSC number, and for a range or an individual UNSPSC, you can set a default. So here within this range, you can set the purchase account code. Remember, for certain items, the purchase account code was populated, as was the tax, but it wasn't for others. So this one here, the tax code's not populated and will need to be rectified within the interim screen if passing from here. You can specify your Q codes. That's a way of grouping your items for reporting purposes. These Q codes can also be used for things such as your approval matrix. So you might want to set up your approval matrix to for approval based on a particular type. Your analysis codes can default from within here as well. So that one there, purchase account's not populated, but the tax code is. Within here, you can also say for this range of items whether the receipt is required. Remember, from within my demonstration, I said my items didn't require receipting. That's how I specified it here. And as mentioned, we do have a global setting for budget checking on all Punchout items, but as a range, you can also limit that as well. Now, I have been mentioning this UNSPSC. Those are within here and are imported using importer or another SQL facility. So that's the main setups for Punchout, but I also did mention that when an invoice comes in from the supplier, it looks for a match. They're imported into iPOS XML tables, and it looks for a match based on our matching criteria set up within XML matching. So if I now look at underneath System Profile, there is a tab there called XML, and underneath that is Invoice Credit Note Import. Within here, you stipulate where the file's coming from, where it will go when it's archived, and if there's any errors, where that goes. You also can set default information to be passed through to your iPOS invoice. The main important thing regarding this is your invoice match by. You have a set of criteria which you can stipulate as to how the invoice is matched to an order. In my case, it was based on order number, line number, value, and I had a tolerance set up as to my value. That's the main setup information within iPOS Admin. There's very little maintenance required regarding the setup of iPOS Admin in order to utilize Punchout within iPOS browser. So this demo has shown the basic processing of a Punchout order and some of the setup involved. And as you can see from this demonstration, iPOS Punchout from a user's perspective is user-friendly and based on what you set up within iPOS admin can automate tasks and greatly reduce the data entry involved.